Hello, folks. So back again with this the Hirakampolitan map of Tomb 100, Chalcolithic 5,500 years old, from Egypt. Pre Bronze Age, pre dynastic, quote unquote. I mean, I guess at this point it was. Yeah, I'm not sure how they exactly decide what's considered pharaonic, but I mean, I think they would agree that this Nakada 2 culture, basically the Nakada culture led to Egyptian culture, and that's openly acknowledged. So, yeah, this is 5,500 years old. These are maps of America, maps of the underworld, which Egyptians called Duat, and they called Aker Aker, and Amentet Neferet, which means the beautiful West. And this was an antipodes map, so it was on the other side of the planet. It's showing basically the lands that are on the other side of the planet, and let's see. These are all Ptolemaic maps, which show America on the, they show the west coast of America, and then they show the Siberian peninsula, but they mixed it up with the with Indochina. There it is in the Hirakampolitan map and in the Ptolemaic map. This is the Siberian Peninsula, but again, they mistook it for Indochina, so they put the rivers of Indochina, the Indochina Peninsula, on here. But the shape of it is, in many ways, more, much closer to the Siberian Peninsula. This is, of course, Baja California in Ptolemaic map on the eastern side of the map, and this is Baja from a satellite image. So you see the 2 points. This point was called Notium Point, or maybe Notia. And then this one is Satyr, because it seemed that the Hawaiian Islands were associated with satyrs, or were supposed to be the island of the satyrs. And then this shows in the Hirakampolitan map, there's the same, it goes back to during the Ice Age when Greenland basically touched Russia, or, Eurasia there. But I was going to show this one. Let's see. I don't know what I just opened. I don't know if you ever have the experience where you try to click on something and somehow it just moves when you click on it. Like they just somehow they engineered it to dodge your click. So this is just something I didn't mean to open, but it's just circling the Greenland where it connects to Russia there, basically. But this, I just wanted to show again, which I've shown in earlier videos, but why the Hirakompolitan map of 5,500 years ago was like this. Like, this is how it was discovered. This was painted on the southwest wall of Tomb 100 at Hierakonpolis. And, so if this was not an antipodes map, like, this is a modern antipodes map. So this is made from the perspective of the quote unquote, Eastern Hemisphere, or like Afro-Eurasia. So it's made from the same perspective as this 5,500-year-old antipodes map, because both of these maps are intended to show the underworld, the antipodes of Afro-Eurasia, of the Afro-Eurasian hemisphere. By luck, they both use orange to show the antipodes. It doesn't have the same, they didn't use the same device of, overlaying a blue, Afro-Eurasia in blue, and then, showing the overlapped regions, as this, this antipodes map is in a sense more informative in that sense. But other than that, they followed the same method of flipping the antipodes east to west and north to south to line up with what they are antipodal to. Because, like, the north is antipodal to the south is antipodal to the north. Like the southern tip of South America here is antipodal to China, which is in the northern hemisphere. So that's how this works. That's how antipodalism works. It turns everything inside out. And so that's why you have this map as it is. I mean, in a way, the most obvious thing, I mean, obviously they separated, this is not the exact, like, any depiction of the globe basically has to, there's no way to accurately depict the planet and its land masses on a flat surface, really. And so obviously there's always choices made, and so they made a particular choice to line everything up and to kind of squeeze America in this line, and to also point Antarctica the same direction, because actually, in reality, these Antarctica here starts here, points northwest, and then America, here is pointing, well, I guess, no, this would be southwest, because this is opposite, or northeast. Yeah, northeast, because this is opposite. And then continues northeast in South America, and then goes northwest, and then kind of goes north. So it's like, it's the actual reality isn't like a straight line, but even in modern times, a lot of people depict it more as a straight line, just because it's for simplicity's sake, and because, like I say, there is no real accurate way to depict the exact dimensions of everything. So you're always going to be making choices of how you kind of fudge it, like what you somewhat arbitrarily decide to depict or not depict. But one thing very evident here is the shape of Antarctica, that this is that side of Antarctica, the American side, as opposed to the Afro-Eurasian side, which is much larger. It's this blue circle here is like basically the real sort of mainland of Antarctica, and then this bulb kind of that comes off from it is itself basically a peninsula, and then it has this long, thinner peninsula coming off to the northeast. So, looking at that, it's very evident that we're looking at the same thing here. You know, it's down to even this little like kind of tuft or notch on the side of it can be seen as this, you know, kind of little tuft or like appendage there, like part that sticks out a bit. You know, so, and even this, like there's a kind of little pocket, and that could be seen as the space between that sliver and here, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a fantastic way to like illustrate for those who don't immediately understand that this is America and that this is Antarctica. Looking at this, you can really see what they were doing. But the point is that for that reason, this map was flipped, and basically that these people, this is a 4,000-year-old America map from Hermopolis, from another city in Egypt. And what it seems is that the person who made this, you know, this is the oldest, I think the oldest Hermopolitan version that we know of, but that they used this model or a model, or basically, you know, the same type of model, but they did not realize that it was, like, they somehow figured out that it was flipped north to south, you know, that actually, like, they figured out which side of it was north and which side of it was south. But they didn't figure out which side was east and which side was west, because which kind of makes sense, because that's a much odder thing to do. It's one thing to, if you're showing north as right or left, to have it flipped around, or, you know, something like that, as opposed to actually flipping east and west, so that, as here, you have Florida on the, this is basically like looking at America, looking at America and Greenland, etc., from underneath. You know, like if the earth was transparent and you were in the center of the earth, you could see like Florida on this side, Baja on this side, and you know, the Tierra del Fuego on the right side. But the Hermopolitan redactor of the Hieropolitan model, they didn't realize that. They didn't realize it was flipped. And, you know, how would they, unless they were told, or unless they actually knew what America looked like to start with, which it seems that they didn't. It seems that they used this map and then carried out new explorations, or tried to combine it with other maps that were not flipped east to west. And so they came out with this. And so that obviously explains why, even though there's so much that's correct in the Hermopolitan maps, especially in this oldest one of the Nomark Jehudinacht, you know, we have Greenland here as this kind of long, kind of a semicircular thing, which is pretty accurate. Have the Hudson Bay here, and it goes up on the, you know, north on the like the eastern side of it is higher, which is western side of it is higher, which is, I think, accurate, or at least it goes further north to the east of, to the west of Hudson Bay than it does to the east of it, which I think is accurate. And then it seems to have, you know, Florida here and the Yucatan here, and it very well captures this. This is, you know, the west coast of Canada, and then here's the U.S. So yeah, basically from here to here is Canada. Like here at the top is Alaska. and then this kind of bump would be the US. This bump is West Mexico. This bump is Central America. Here is Cuba. They show it in at least one version as the shape of Cuba, like a long island, and then the kind of more squat shape of, more, I don't know, different shape of, pretty accurate of Hispaniola or, Haiti here. So all that is pretty accurate. I mean, it's kind of confusing why there's just this straight line here and what's going on here. But, you could kind of imagine that this is stylized and that this is meant to like somehow like follow the coastline or something. But, it's getting weird here. And then, but here, like this is great because this is the Isthmus of Panama, clearly, the shortest distance between the two coasts is exactly where it really is, which is, just between North and South America. But this is, and the other one is here, like the Isthmus of Tepa, I forget what it's called, like in Oaxaca. That's like the second closest part, and then other than also the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of California. But this part is wonky, obviously, because this is like this would be Honduras on the northern part of it, and then the southern part of it would be Nicaragua, and that's not the shape of that. Like it does stick out a bit, but not anything like that, not even as much as this. So that's like a question mark there. And then this is Brazil, and with Brazil, like they got the right shape in the sense that they understood that South America goes, slopes fairly gently southwest on its western side, whereas on its eastern side, it actually kind of jumps, it has kind of a crease and then jumps like northeast for like, that coast, and for Brazil and everything like that is along there. It's not this shape really. It would be more like larger and, but we can see that, I mean, I think it seems clear that was based on the same mistake, because when they went to, when they used this map, this was based on misreading this as if this was the East Coast instead of the West Coast. And so they, instead of flipping it as I've done, here, which is showing a bird's eye view of it, whereas this is looking at it from underneath basically. And so I think that somebody tried to use this basically to sail around America. Oregon, maybe they just combined it with other maps, but like, they, like once they got to Tierra del Fuego at the tip of South America, I think that they realized that they thought it was exaggerated because the here's a second, let me try to find this thing. See, this actually is a later, or I'm not sure when this is from, Scenes Tomb of Nacht Tempora. but this might actually show America as well. This would be that kind of coast of Canada here, and then this would be like the US, and then this thing here might be Baja California, and then this might be South America here. Not entirely sure of that, but that's what it looks like it's trying to do, because it seems that, you know, it's in a tomb, which is, you know, where the underworld would usually be shown, and it's often shown surrounded by these type of scenes, like people engaged in farming activities, and like so that one I'll try to get into a deeper like comparison of that. But you know, here this kind of shows okay, well, okay, here. Finally found it. So when they did explore it, I think they were looking for this point here that was pointing to the but they had it flipped around, so they were thinking that there was this point that was pointing due east, basically. So they looked for that as the furthest southern point, and they basically found it, because it actually, at the southernmost point, it does stick east for like a tiny, you know, just a tiny bit. It just turns around and points east a little bit. So it seems like, I mean, this is my guess, and you know, maybe they thought maybe this was originally included with it or something, like the Falklands, I don't know, but I think that they interpreted that as meaning that the map was stylized, and that the original Hierocompolitan map was stylized, and that there was a tendency, or like a tradition of exaggerated you know, twists in the coast. So they treated it that. So I mean, that's the best I can figure for why they then turned Brazil into basically the same thing, because they said, well, it actually, you know, it actually sticks out more to the east here. So it'd be silly to have, you know, like they didn't want to take this off because it's the ancient thing, and they knew that that map had validity. They just didn't understand why it was how it was. And so they didn't want to just remove that. So, but then at the same time, it would be silly to leave that, but then act like there's nothing here, because this is the real thing that points east. So instead, they just made two of them basically identical, where, you know, they made this one, and then they made this one wider than that one, and maybe a little bit longer than it, because they're like, hey, if we're gonna leave this, but we at least have to put something here to be accurate. And then I think when they saw this, when they saw how the coasts of Honduras and you know, Honduras and Nicaragua points east, you know, certainly from here there's a sharp, you know, goes straight east, and it does kind of point out in that direction. And so since they figure, again, if they're gonna leave this huge promontory peninsula thing for that little bit of Tierra del Fuego that actually points east, then they should definitely also do at least as much for this, which actually points east much further. So, I believe in that sense, they were conservative in not making these more, longer than this. They kind of just tried to, work within the bounds of this as much as they possibly could, but just add certain things to to be closer to reality. So that makes perfect sense. And then when you realize that they probably had the whole thing, they probably used the whole thing from north to south. So that explains also all these weird shapes, like I was thinking for a while that was just the original Egyptian tradition, was just to make a wavy line wherever you don't know, like, or, there was just some tradition of making these exaggerated waves and bends in the coasts or whatever. But what I think it is really is that they, again, were confused by this map, not realizing it was flipped east to west. And so they took it as a stylized form, and then they tried to replicate that style. So they found, this is actually, pointing the wrong, this is the Yucatan, which points to the east. But here, without flipping it, it seems to point west. So that becomes, that's why South America has what looks like a huge freaking, promontory, or kind of, I don't know what you would even call these, like just a roundish protrusion into the, in the westward direction. And this is very much, or it certainly is similar to in shape to this, because if we look at this, it's obviously they didn't do the exact shape of this, but they did a rough outline kind of. So instead of all the little details they have here, they just did and then the peninsula. But then I think once they realized that, yes, there are some kind of squiggles in the in Central America, like there is like this squiggle, this part kind of goes to the west, and you could say this kind of bump right here kind of does go to the west, but not so dramatically. And if anything, like this West Mexico is a much more dramatic, like, bump that points to, especially right here, that points westward. So they figured, okay, we'll be conservative, we'll leave this thing as it is here, but if we're going to leave that, we have to add an equal bump. And again, they conservatively added an equal instead of a larger bump, but somewhat similar as Western Mexico. And then they saw that there's just as big or more of a bump here for the United States, and so then they're like, okay, we're going to be conservative, we're going to leave this, we're not even going to make these ones larger than it, even though they are larger than it, but we're going to add them and basically treat it as a style and say, okay, this is the exaggerated style of this map. And another way where we can see this is in that, even though in some ways this is a somewhat accurate, I mean, like, I can see how they might have seen how this as fitting, and in some ways it does fit the reality, but I also think this is based on the mistaken reading of this map without flipping it. So, you know, because here we can see basically the same shape. Like here it goes northeast, then northwest, then southeast, then then southwest, then northwest. And again, here it goes northeast, northwest, southwest, and northwest to the very top. And again, the top side is here, seemingly on the what is actually the western coast, but which is actually, I mean, in a way, in that sense, this is kind of more accurate. But I still think like this is not from this. This is from another map, and possibly even made by the person who painted this map. You know, it could be that they themselves sailed it, or, you know, or this whole map could be copied off of somebody else who made these mistakes. But clearly this was combined with another map that was not flipped, and that, you know, this whole thing is not at all on this. You know, there's not that much detail at that coast. So, you know, that all makes sense. Also, I think, well, actually, I guess this one was not even necessarily just to replicate this, but also, you know, it seemed like they figured like, okay, they're gonna be conservative, they're gonna keep this map, but they're just gonna, but since it seems like inaccurate, basically they're gonna roughly outline it. So instead of these little nuanced things, they just go from here to here. And then since this especially didn't seem to fit, they just go around it and make it into like a bump. And then that becomes, or at least that's subsumed into like this whole, like, kind of lurch, what seemed to them like northwestward, including this and all of this, was just subsumed into this. And then I think it was later when they realized that there actually is the biggest bump of all is actually the US. They just kind of had to add that one on, even though, even if anything, they make it look smaller than both of these two, even though it's much larger than both of these two in terms of how far it actually, you know, juts out into the Pacific. So that, you know, and then on this side, it seems like they found Florida and they associated it probably with this, with